Bride of Justice: How One Woman's Dark Secret Brought Down Nigeria's Most Dangerous Crime Family. In Port Harcourt, they say every bride wears two faces on her wedding day, the one beneath her jewel and the one she shows the world. But Amara Kalio wore three: devoted fiancé, brilliant lawyer, and the woman who would bring down Nigeria's most powerful crime family from the altar itself. 5 hours before saying "I do," she touched the USB drive hidden in her coral beads and deleted a message about 5 bodies in the mangroves. Her mother called her the most beautiful bride in Rivers State. The police called her nothing, they didn't even know she existed. And her husband-to-be? He called her my love, not knowing she had spent 7 years planning this wedding. Not as a celebration of love, but as an execution of justice. They were all right about one thing: this would be a wedding to remember. They just didn't know it would end with handcuffs instead of wedding bands. The white and gold George wrapper felt like armor against Amara Kalio's skin as she studied her reflection in the full-length mirror. 5 hours until she became Mrs. George Will. 5 hours until everything changed. "You look absolutely stunning," her mother exclaimed, adjusting the elaborate jewel headpiece. "Tam won't be able to take his eyes off you." Asterisk, that's exactly what I'm counting on. Asterisk, Amara thought, touching the small USB drive hidden in her coral beads. Her mother was right about one thing: she had never looked more beautiful. Or more dangerous. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number: 5 bodies found in the mangroves behind Borakiri. "Your proof is here." Amara's hands trembled slightly as she deleted the message. Nobody at her lavish engagement ceremony knew about those bodies, nobody except the bride. And soon, everyone would understand why they had to be found today of all days. "Mama," she said, turning to her mother with a practiced smile, "I need a moment alone. To pray." As soon as the door closed, Amara pulled out her secure phone, the one not even Zainab knew about. She typed quickly, "Everything ends today." 7 years earlier, the case that started it all landed on Amara's desk on a rainy Tuesday in 2016. She was still a junior associate then, barely 2 years out of law school, handling minor criminal cases that the senior partners didn't want to touch. Pro bono, her supervisor had said with a dismissive wave. "Some market woman's son. Armed robbery charge. Open and shut case, just get him to plead guilty." But something about the file caught her eye. The witness statements were too perfect, the evidence too neat. And the defendant's mother, something about her reminded Amara of her own mother's desperation when Amara's father had disappeared 15 years ago. "I swear on my life, my son is innocent," Mrs. Adebayo had insisted, her wrapper soaked from waiting hours in the rain to see Amara. "He was with me at the market when that robbery happened." The police, they just needed someone to blame. That night, instead of heading home, Amara found herself driving to the crime scene in D-Line. The security guard was initially reluctant to talk, but Amara had learned early on that in Port Harcourt, every secret had a price. That night, the guard whispered, pocketing the crisp notes Amara had handed him. "I saw everything. But the ogre police told me to forget what I saw. Said my family would suffer if I talked." By dawn, Amara had uncovered enough discrepancies to know something was deeply wrong. But it wasn't until she hacked into the police database, thank you, Chidi from computer science, for those programming lessons at Uniport, that she found the truth. The real robbers were the sons of a prominent politician. The market woman's son had been set up to take the fall. That was the moment her condition started. The burning need to dig deeper, to find truth buried under layers of lies. Her colleagues called her obsessive. Her mother called it that stubborn streak that will get you into trouble. Only Amara knew it was something else, a calling she couldn't ignore. Nobody quite remembered when Tamunodiapre Tam George Will started showing interest in Amara Kalio. Some said it was after she won the impossible Riverine Development Corporation case. Others swore it began at the Attorney General's dinner, where Amara had outshone every senior lawyer present with her brilliant argument about judicial reform. The truth, as usual in Port Harcourt, lay somewhere in the murky waters between perception and reality. "That man has been watching you since you walked in," Zainab had whispered at the NBA gala, nudging Amara with her elbow. And not just any man, the youngest state director of public prosecutions in Rivers state history. Amara remembered that night vividly. She'd worn a fitted red dress that made her mother tsk about modern girls showing too much skin. Her latest investigation had led her to believe someone high up in the DPP's office was coordinating with oil companies to bury environmental cases. She just hadn't known who. Then Tam approached her table, all charm and perfectly tailored agbada. "Ms. Kalio," he'd said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey, "your reputation precedes you. That motion you filed in the Coronation Trust case? Brilliant work. You mean the case your office tried to throw out on technicalities?" Amara had replied with a sweet smile that made Zainab kick her under the table. Tam threw his head back and laughed, a rich, genuine sound that would haunt Amara's dreams for years to come. "Guilty as charged. But in my defense, I was merely doing my job." "And what job is that, Mr. George Will? Justice or convenience?" Instead of taking offense, his eyes had sparkled with interest. "Have dinner with me, and I'll let you cross-examine me properly. I know a place in GRA that serves the best African dishes in Port Harcourt." That was how it began, a dangerous dance of attraction and investigation. Every dinner date was a chance to gather intelligence. Every shared laugh held hidden questions. Every kiss, well, those became complicated. Because here was the thing about Tam George Will that Amara's investigation files didn't show: he was genuinely charming. Brilliant. Funny in a way that made her stomach flutter. He could quote a Keeb and Soyinka from memory, knew exactly how she liked her jollof rice, extra spicy with burnt bottom, and had a habit of sending her voice notes of his horrible attempts at singing when she worked late. "You're playing with fire," Zainab warned her one evening as they sat in Amara's secret office, a small flat in old GRA that only her closest confidants knew about. "I see the way you look at him. This isn't just an investigation anymore, is it?" Amara stared at the wall of evidence she'd collected over the years. Pictures, documents, connecting threads that all led back to the man she was supposed to marry. The man who, despite everything she knew about him, still made her heart race when he smiled. "It doesn't matter what I feel," she'd replied, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "You've seen the evidence. His office has buried 17 major corruption cases in the last 5 years. The disappearing witnesses, the suspicious acquittals, all roads lead to him. And what about the road leading to your heart?" Zainab pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, that's the most dangerous path of all." Before Amara could respond, her secure phone buzzed. A message from one of her informants: "Big movement at Borokiri waterfront. They're cleaning house. 5 targets." "Oh God," Amara whispered, her face paling. "They're eliminating loose ends before the wedding." She grabbed her car keys, but Zainab blocked the door. "You can't keep doing this alone. Let me help." "No." Amara's voice was sharp. "I need you to go to my office, access the red file on my computer. Password is father's last words. If anything happens to me..." "Don't even say that. If anything happens," Amara continued firmly, "that file goes to every news outlet in Nigeria. Promise me." As she drove through Port Harcourt's rain-slicked streets that night, Amara couldn't stop thinking about Tam's last words to her earlier that day. 24 hours, my love, and you'll be Mrs. George Will. I can hardly wait. Asterisk neither can I asterisk, she thought grimly, checking her gun was secured under her seat. Asterisk but probably for very different reasons star. What she didn't know then was that someone else was watching her every move. Someone whose jealousy and resentment had been festering for years. Someone who was about to throw all her carefully laid plans into chaos. Folake sat in her car across from Amara's secret office, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone as she typed a message to Tam. "We need to talk. It's about Amara. She's not who you think she is." The rain intensified, drowning out the sound of her bitter laughter. Port Harcourt's most brilliant young lawyer was about to learn that she wasn't the only one who could set a trap. The Borokiri waterfront at night was a different world from the glossy Port Harcourt that tourists saw. Here, between creaking wooden jetties and rusting fishing boats, the real business of the city took place. Tonight, that business smelled like death. Amara parked her car 3 streets away, swapping her designer heels for rubber slippers. The things she'd learned as a lawyer's daughter in this city, expensive shoes left memorable prints, and memories could be dangerous. "Madam Lawyer," a voice whispered from the shadows. It was Small Prince, one of her most reliable informants. During the day, he sold pure water near the courthouse. At night, he saw everything. "Show me," she said, pressing a wad of Naira notes into his palm. They moved silently through the maze of wooden structures, the ground slick with rain and mud. Small Prince suddenly stopped, pointing to a warehouse ahead. "Them don bring 5 people here earlier. Big men cars. But only 4 cars leave." Amara's heart pounded. "Any faces you recognize?" "One person we come at last. Walk like your ogre. The DPP. Tam star." Her fingers instinctively touched the engagement ring on her finger. The 3-carat diamond caught what little light there was, mocking her. A noise made them freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, approaching from the waterfront. Small Prince melted into the shadows with practiced ease, but Amara needed to get closer. She had to know. She crouched behind a stack of oil drums, the smell of petroleum sharp in her nostrils. 3 men emerged from the warehouse, talking in low voices. "Clean everything up," one was saying. "The ceremony is tomorrow. Oga no want any warala." "What about the bodies?" "High tide coming. Water go carry them far." Amara bit back a gasp as she recognized the 3rd man, Inspector James, head of the state CID, who had dined at her family home just last week. Who had raised a toast to her upcoming marriage. She needed evidence. Her hand crept toward her phone, but fate had other plans. A rat, startled by her movement, scurried across her feet. The squeak she let out was tiny, but in the quiet night, it might as well have been a gunshot. "Who's there?" What happened next was pure chaos. Amara ran, her rubber slippers slapping against the wet ground. Shots rang out. She heard Inspector James shouting, "Find them. Nobody must know." She zigzagged between buildings, blessing her university days when she'd run track. A bullet splintered wood near her head. Another pierced a water drum, spraying her with liquid. She didn't stop running. Somewhere in the distance, a familiar sound made her heart leap. Small Prince's pure water cart, wheeling rapidly down the street. The boy was creating a diversion. Amara made it to her car, hands shaking so badly she almost dropped her keys. As she sped away, her phone buzzed. A message from Tam. "Can't sleep thinking about tomorrow. I love you so much, my justice warrior. You've made me the happiest man in Rivers State." She pulled over and threw up. Back at her secret office, Zainab was waiting with hot tea and a change of clothes. One look at Amara's face told her everything. "How bad?" "5 bodies," Amara whispered. "And Tam?" "Tam was there." "Are you sure?" "Maybe. He ordered it, Zainab. To clean up loose ends before the wedding." Amara's laugh was hollow. "My fiancé, the love of my life, is a murderer." "Then we stop the wedding," Zainab said firmly. We take what evidence we have to the press. No. Amara's voice hardened. We stick to the plan. Tomorrow, everyone will know exactly who Temunodiapre